There has been a huge budget put out itself, and you have rightly raised some points in terms of right now it's not just a lower income segment that has been severely impacted itself. The middle class itself do not receive as much support, let's say for people in the lower class where they are perhaps even on existing Comcare schemes, while middle class segments right now they have to start putting out, they have to start going through this process and coming back to the eligibility itself. This time around during this pandemic, you might see a lot of people just slipping through the cracks, not receiving self-employment assistance, not receiving a lot of the assistance needed to actually help them tide through this time. It seems like right now there's a middle class which we have to be worried about, or if not, if let's say we do not have the right policies in place, we're going to start having a much larger lower class resulting from the middle income.
So for the lower income households, they have very little fat, and we need to continue to support them and give more support to them. So sole breadwinner in jobs which are very vulnerable, in sectors that have been severely disrupted. They have very little savings, they have lots of responsibilities. So I think that group we have to continue to provide more support in an integrated way. But you're quite right that the middle income families in Singapore are under great strain because this pandemic just hit like that. Exactly. Just imagine Chinese New Year and pre-Chinese New Year is a very different environment from now, July.
Exactly, people were still spending.
They were planning for their holidays, they're planning for discretionary spending.
The lifestyle was totally wiped out.
And you talked about lifestyles impacted. I think beyond lifestyles being impacted, it's really livelihoods and lives being impacted. It's not just discretionary lifestyle, but very fundamental things are being affected. For the middle income households in Singapore, you can have two breadwinners suddenly disrupted. Let's say both are in F&B, or both are in hospitality or in the travel industry, and both suddenly feel impacted, or in oil and gas industry for that matter. And you can see a sudden catastrophic impact on these families. And for the middle income households, for a number of years already, government support has increased. I think we have to acknowledge that. In terms of housing grants and eligibility, in terms of healthcare support, including for outpatient support and treatment. There's increase in childcare subsidies, which only took effect in January, that go higher up into the middle income families. But the impact of COVID hits them in multifaceted ways. So the key for middle income households, in fact, what they are looking for are not just handouts. They want to get back to work. They hope that their jobs can be secure. If not, the resilience of the Singaporean is such that they want a job. And when I go around speaking to middle-income households, even low-income households, they say, help me get a job and I will look after myself and the family. I'm prepared to learn something. So I think we shouldn't stereotype the Singaporean. They really are very driven. Definitely. And so the National Jobs Council's role is very important. Sure. Jobs will be more scarce in Singapore and around the world. Yeah. So government has to intervene to tilt in favour of employers keeping Singaporeans on the job. Sure. Through job support, through the SG United Jobs and Traineeship Program, where we fund training, we fund incentives for employers to hire Singaporeans, especially older Singaporeans. And so that jobs are first. And then, of course, Singaporeans have lots of responsibilities. They have housing loan, they have car loan, they have responsibility to children, they have responsibility to their parents.
Exactly.
So some of these government schemes will be able to support, and if they've been impacted, step forward and we'll see what adjustments can be made. But some of this is really a debt. And so, I'm not sure if you recall, earlier on in this crisis, the Association of Banks, many banks, worked together to help to delay some people's debt obligations.
Insurance payments, and rental payments, and
it makes sense, because you have a whole segment of society who have been very severely impacted. It makes sense for them to be able to defer some of these liabilities, both principal as well as interest, if they choose to, and if they need to, because it comes with a cost, right? You defer some of this, then the interest may accrue. But in the immediate term, because of cash flow, because of the illiquidity of some of their assets, and because they really just need to tide through this immediate critical period. I think that is a good move. And then the Ministry of Law came in with the COVID temporary measures legislation, and people who have committed to certain obligations can have their obligations postponed and have legal liabilities held in abeyance for some time. And that really just lifts off some of that burden, not just legal and fiscal burden, but it just lifts things off their shoulders for a while. And that is unprecedented in our history, right? Helping SME owners, the people who run the brick and mortar business, who work really hard, getting relief from landlords, and landlords after landlord above them, or tenant, subtenant, other subtenant, and they're right at the bottom, managing and doing the real work, making sure that both property tax as well as rental relief cascades down to the people who really use their hands and roll up the sleeves and do the work. So those are our measures, right? So we help keep jobs, help to sustain employment, we help suspend liabilities both through legislation as well as working with banks, right? And then of course we need to make sure that there is that social safety net for those who do fall through, and people will fall through, right? They've lost their jobs, can't be saved, the jobs are gone, the businesses shutter or they move out of Singapore, and their liabilities pile up. How do we ensure that there is some support? So we have the Temporary Relief Fund, we have COVID-19 support grant, you have ComCare, and you have a lot of generous Singaporeans, corporate Singapore, right? Singaporeans from all walks of life have contributed. So in the first 4 or 5 months of this year, contributions to the Community Chest and the Sayang Sayang Fund, as well as I believe it's CFS, I think, total some $90 million. Totaling all of last year.
It has been a generous contribution from Singaporeans.
And our responsibility to them, to these donors, ordinary Singaporeans, companies, is that those resources are used effectively. That is our challenge.
On that point, in terms of how this whole crisis has impacted the lower income and middle income disproportionately, and in terms of where the government has been really putting a lot of stimulus in trying to keep the jobs, and I think that's definitely the right strategy for it, because Singaporeans are an independent bunch itself. They want those good jobs. They want those good jobs to be able to support themselves, and then of course without having to rely on government handouts. How about childcare subsidies? How about families? How about parents within the lower middle income segment, childcare support, childcare subsidies for this segment? Do you think that's something which we could potentially explore as well?
Yes, we want to make sure that our young Singaporeans get off to a good start in life. And a good preschool education is absolutely critical to getting them on the same starting block as their peers from better off families. Because science tells us that the child's cognitive development, emotional development, physical development is critical between the ages of 0 to 6.
Exactly.
And 0 to 3, particularly important for language development. And if you can speak well, it allows you to express a lot of what you want to convey, and to be able to convey emotions and convey your views.
Well.
So good preschool education is more than just alternative caregiving. It is really about developing the child. And we want to make sure that all Singapore children, especially those from the low income households, have good quality, affordable and accessible childcare. And that is our commitment. And to do that, we have to do a lot of things. We have to look at the sector as a whole, the preschool sector, and ensure that we make preschool affordable. And to that end, over the years, we've been enhancing subsidies. And in fact, in January this year, we announced it last year, but it took effect in January this year. We increased the income ceiling, so more middle-income households will benefit from basic subsidies and additional subsidies. We raised the subsidy levels at every income tier. And that made preschool a lot more affordable across the board, but especially for low-income households. And so a Singaporean family that earns below $3,000 household income, if they put their child in an anchor operator, which there are 5 operators, both private and as well as people sector, and they have a lot of centres all over Singapore. A household that earns below $3,000 a month, the preschool can be as affordable as $3 a month for full day childcare. And for those families, especially the more vulnerable ones, even that can be supported. Even the startup, the startup deposit, the uniform, the ancillaries.
Are we talking
can
about
also be
special
supported.
cases families? Special cases families.
No, so $3 is for all households who earn below
Okay.
earn below 3,000 a month.
For those who are slightly above the threshold line?
No, so
Okay.
above 3,000 all the way up to
Sure.
the income ceiling, there are subsidies and support.
Okay.
And there are some who are non-working mothers. They, working mothers get additional subsidies. Mothers who are not working won't get those subsidies. But we put in a lot of flexibilities, including for those who are looking after parents, looking after spouses or children with disability or who've got poor health, or if they're looking for work, or if they work, up to 2 hours a day, they will get the subsidy. So a lot of flexibilities have been put in order to ensure that preschool is of good quality and is accessible and affordable. Now, there will be further moves from next January, where we further bring down fees, right? When we reduce the fee cap for partner operators, so not just anchor operators, but partner operators. And then beyond that, there'll be further downward efforts to bring fees down even more, while ensuring that quality in terms of pedagogy, in terms of the environment, in terms of outdoor learning and education, and in terms of the quality of teachers that come into the sector, all right, go up. So these are two things we're doing in tandem, and just growing the sector as a whole, making it convenient and in the community. But for lower income households with Kids Start, now a pilot of 1,000 children, we're going to bring in another 5,000 children, and many of these households could also be in ComLink districts. We want to make sure that we support the child, support the parent and the family as a whole in a multifaceted way, what we just described earlier.